Hey everyone, it's Zen with this week's Dragon Ball Super Fusion World Top 5 Decks of the Week, the fourth installment of this weekly series where I showcase the top 5 best meta decks in the Fusion World client. But before we get into that, if you could awaken that like button and subscribe, you'll be helping out the channel tremendously. Now let's check out this week's Set 3's best decks to use in the client, starting with the King of Blue himself, Vegeta. Now it's no surprise Vegeta, the leader in blue, is doing really well, specifically with Jiren and Beerus being an amazing anti-red deck. What makes it so powerful is the fact that it can bottom deck your opponent's cards with things like your Sinister Sickle. Yeah, say goodbye to the 4-drop SR Jirens and any other 4-drop or less card on your opponent's side of the field. We also have our 6-drop Zeno that just clears the board from everything, as well as some other really interesting strategic cards, like for example this Vegeta, where if you have 7 cards or fewer in your hand, you reduce the cost of all of your opponent's cards, and then with that you can play things like your Son Gohan Adolescence here, which can bottom deck 2 of your opponent's cards with a cost of 3 or less. Now if you partner this up with that Vegito, you can technically bottom deck 4 drops with this effect. But that's not all. This deck also has the peel-off engine, which is insane, and the second pseudo peel-off engine being this Videl card, where when attacking, and if you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, you can return 1 blue non-Videl card with a cost of 3 or less and Earthling in their special traits back to your hand. Now why would you want to use this? Mainly for this card right here, this Bulma card, which if you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, any of your Vegetas get a plus 10k power for the turn. And on top of that, this card gives you 10k combo. So if you really think about it, you're giving any Vegeta plus 20k if you want. Now this is really good with your double striker here, which can close out games very strongly, or even your leader when you awaken and have 7 cards or less in your hand, because that also becomes a 35k power. Again, this deck is really good for controlling the board, but also has a aggro-centric approach when needed to be. Very good into the late game, and is extremely powerful with that peel-off engine to just keep cycling back your 10k combos and beef up your heavy hitters. Moving on to, speaking of green, androids are still dominating this week. Who would have thought? And when you look at this deck list, there is only one brand new Set 3 card in this deck list that honestly makes a ton of sense, and that's going to be this 5-drop Cell here. Now going into literally anything, it's extremely powerful. However, if you're going into something like red, they can just damage reduce you and you don't get the win KO'd effect. But this is strong going into yellow now, especially with that SR Vegeta that a lot of yellow players like to run, to where none of your big bosses like your double androids here can activate their effect. You can't KO anything. You also have your Son Gohan here who can't KO anything, which is honestly really good into something like Jiren, right? Especially if you proc their first when not KO'd ability, because now you can use this cell to block and then activate their win KO'd ability to just send their SR Vegeta or anything else that you want that is a 4 cost or less to the owner's energy in rest mode. It's a really good way to get things off the board, including the 4-drop SR Jiren, because they're going to need to attack in order to be in rest mode to activate their ability. But again, red does have a lot of damage reduction, so that is something you need to be considerate about. Other than that, this deck does exactly what it's supposed to do. It has all these android cards. It has these 2 copies of the Self-Awakener in case you get stuck at 5, your 4 Krillins to help you find your double androids, and pretty much ramp up as quickly as possible. You'll notice the only big boss cards are the double androids, because that's how you're going to close out games. You're going to play your double androids, you're going to go gigantic Meteor, Cell Jr. to bring any of these back if you need to, and you're just going to blow up the opposing leader's life. And then we have a ton of these lower cost, 2 cost 20k bodies that can actually hit the opponents and chip away at life, or chip away at least combos from their hand, which is why androids are still very strong into the meta. But now let's check out the 3rd most used deck this week, and look at that, it is the brand new black leader, the Son Goku GT, which if you don't know has a pretty decent ability. On your turn, activate main for 1 energy. You get to choose up to 1 of your battle cards. and give it 10k plus power until the end of your opponent's next turn. However, if you decided to remove an energy marker for that cost, it is instead 15k power. You could use this to beef up cards so that way you don't have to worry about your opponent removing them, specifically your secret rare Son Goku GT. Now you'll notice there are 4 copies in this, and the people that are running these are the extremely lucky ones or the whales that spend a ton of money into this game. I myself only have 2 copies, so don't feel bad. But other than that, we have a ton of energy manipulation cards here. We have our 4 Kakarots, we have our 4 Self-Awakening 3-drop Son Gokus, as well as the Son Goku secret rare right here. But a couple other really interesting cards is, for example here, the Pair Brothers are so good because every time you cycle that energy marker, you can just play this on playability to just prevent any one of your opponent's battle cards from attacking, which is very strong. And then you can combo with this and send it to your drop. But that's not all. Then you can play something like Hercule with their on play ability to then cycle that card back. So you technically can freeze up to 8 times in a match if you need to. I think that synergy between both of them is very, very strong. We also have our 1-drop Pan Searcher to help you find your GT Gokus or even your Trunkses right here. But then another card that I really want to talk about is this Pan right here, this 2-drop Pan, already very strong. However, when attacking for 1 energy, you draw 1 card, and if you used your energy marker, you get to bounce a 4 cost or less back to the owner's hand. This is extremely strong into Jiren, which is again a very relevant leader. They are topping a lot in tournaments, and you're going to see this leader a lot on the digital client. And it's good to have these kinds of cards that can interact with Jiren in a way where it's like, okay, we don't care about your not KO'd ability. Just go back to your hand, be a 0 combo in your hand, and waste 4 more energy to replay this card. And another really good card in this deck is this Bardock. It's honestly a very strong card in the black card list entirely because it has an auto once per turn. When you use a card in combo, while this card is in battle, draw a card and then switch it to active mode. Now, why is this good? Well, if you attacked and you're rested, right, and it's your opponent's turn and they attack into you, all you have to do is combo once, it's switched to active mode. And then they can't attack into it again. So you're guaranteed, unless they have another means of removal, to always have this Bardock just kind of there, and they draw for you. It's like a free draw engine, and it's like a free reactivated stand. It's pretty strong. But yeah, this is a very consistent black leader in the digital client as of right now. But speaking of Jiren, we've been talking about him throughout this entire video, and here's a deck list that kind of mixes in everything we're seeing. Now, this isn't like the staple deck list, but we're taking a bunch of the different types of topping Jiren deck lists, and this is the one that kind of feels the most consistent, right? But you can play however you want. The strategy here is to play your 4-drop right here and get them on the board. Now, a couple cards in here are specifically meant to do certain things. Like, for example, this Saved by the Barrier is here to protect your Jiren whenever you need it to for 1 energy. However, we have some other cards, like specifically the 2-drop Fua, as well as the 4-drop Ellie's right here. Now, for 6 energy, you can go into a mirror match with Jiren and just remove their Jiren for no problem whatsoever. It's actually pretty strong. How this works is you play your Fua, you reduce them to, what is that, 1500 themselves, and then you can play a Hellies right here and give them another minus 20k. Now you could also play this Hellies by themselves to make their SR Jiren into a 10k. You could play 2 Fuas to just instantly remove them. You could play a single Fua and a single Son Gohan. Like, there's so much removal here that goes into the mirror match extremely strong. We also have our Self-Awakeners being a hit and a couple other cards. We have 2 forms of draw with the 8 copies of like Piccolo and Master Roshi, as well as an early control being Whis right here. Again, if you get 2 of these onto the board, then by turn 4, you can counter their SR Jiren with your Hellies. Like, there's just so much potential here. One card you can't use into SR Jiren is the room sheet, because it also has and KO it. You can't KO it, that effect. It doesn't matter. I wish it kind of did, right? If it was just reduce them by 30k combo, 30k power, I mean, then this would be a very strong card into a mirror match, but it is not the case. We also have the Son Goku right here, which is really strong to close out, specifically with this card right here, the Margarita, where you can play them once your leader's awakened over and over and over again, and just give your double striker plus 20k combo every time you play this card, considering you'll also combo into it. But yeah, it's a pretty consistent Jiren deck. I like it the way it's built right here. It has a lot of control options, as well as being pretty aggro if you want to be in the late game once you get everything you need. Which brings us to our final top 5 deck of this week, and yeah, it's Bardock. If you asked me last week, I would have said, nah, Bardock, like it's a cool starter deck leader, that's about it. But yo, this week, everyone is playing Bardock, and there are a lot of winners with Bardock. Honestly, Bardock might actually be the stronger black leader in the game right now. And what makes Bardock so good is probably his ability right here, where when attacking, he becomes a 25k swing. But on top of that, you get to look at the top card of your deck, use up to one more battle card with Bardock's crew and its special traits, which you can, this deck definitely has, or place it on the bottom of your deck. This just helps you cycle your cards way more effectively. However, this is an ability you could only use on your turn. What I mean by this is if you use this ability and you're looking for something like your double striker and you pull, I don't know, this card right here, or this, like something else that you don't need, you can just bottom deck that card, right? And then get you that much closer to pulling the cards that you actually need. And that's what I think is making this deck very, very strong. A couple other very key cards in this deck that I think we should go over is this 1-drop Dr. Mew right here, which honestly is really strong with its 10k combo, but also once per turn for 1 energy and discarding 1 card from your hand, you give yourself an energy marker if you don't have one. Now, this is very good if you don't have any of your other cards that give you an energy marker. You can also use this and synergize it with your Para brothers. You can also use Hercule or bring either of those back. You can use Hercule to bring back your 2 draw options or even your Giru right here. And then on top of that, we have 2 copies of our Self Awakener. That also gets boosted with combo, 4 copies of this amazing Bardock that we recently just talked about, as well as 4 copies of the Secret Rare and the Double Striker, which is making this deck a very consistent leader. Honestly, I might be playing a lot of Bardock this upcoming week to see what the hype is about, but I like the deck list nonetheless. But yeah, there you have it. That's this week's top 5 decks of the week. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Which of these decks might you be trying? Which ones do you think will make it next week potentially? Would you change the order of this? Maybe even add a separate leader? Let me know all that and more in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys next week with another top 5 decks of the week. Thanks for watching.